Today, basically it's sort of money or NED money. Okay, that doesn't matter. As long as we are with the people in the struggle, that's more matter now. Okay, thank you, and satu tepukan untuk semua orang for keep on supporting Suaram. There are old faces, new faces are here. Thank you for all for coming. I want to pass the floor to our moderator today, Saudari Fadia. Fadia, and the floor is now to you. So I may invite all the speakers to be with me.
A very good evening to everyone. And I would like to thank everyone for being here to join us at a forum organized by Suaram entitled Who is in the Spotlight? Suaram Scorpene. As we all know, over the past 3 months, Suaram has been in the spotlight. They have been called in for investigation by the Companies Commission of Malaysia, Perkeso, and now the Registrar of Society, the ROS. A lot of accusations have been thrown at Suaram. One of it is being a foreign agent. And a police report has been lodged against Suaram by a group called Jaringan Melayu Malaysia. And based on that one police report, this whole investigation has been initiated by the government and its 8 agencies to investigate. And up until now, the basis of the investigation remains unknown to Suaram and its lawyers. And as you all know, Suaram stands for Suara Rakyat Malaysia, the voices of the people of Malaysia. Suaram has been doing human rights advocacy work since 1989, and now it has been in its 23rd year doing the good work to promote and uphold human rights. And the question is, why now? Why now the government is so interested in investigating Suaram, in dragging Suaram for investigations, questioning that lasted for hours and hours and hours, and now the ROS, the Registrar of Society, is calling one of our speakers here tomorrow to be questioned, even though the ROS has no power to investigate Suaram. And today, we are very fortunate to have a line of strong speakers to discuss with us the topic that we chose for today, Suaram or Scorpene, who is in the spotlight. So I would like to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker would be Miss Cynthia Gabriel. Miss Cynthia Gabriel is also known as Miss Submarine or Miss Scorpene. A very brave woman indeed. Cynthia Gabriel is Suaram's Secretariat member, and she was former Suaram Executive Director. And our second speaker is our Miss Irene Fernandez. Irene Fernandez is one of the leading figures in civil society, an activist who was charged in 1996 for exposing the abuse of migrant workers. And Irene Fernandez is the Executive Director of Tenaga Nita, an NGO that champions migrants' rights. And our third speaker is our Miss Ambiga Srinivasan. Indeed. Ambiga is the co-chairperson of BERSIH, the Coalition for Free and Fair Elections, and she's also a practicing lawyer. She was called to the bar of England and Wales in 1980, and she's admitted as advocate and solicitor of the High Court of Malaya in 1982. And our last speaker is Mr. Tommy Thomas. Mr. Tommy Thomas is a renowned lawyer. He was called to the Malaysian bar in 1976, and he started his career at one of the largest law firms in Malaysia before being invited to join its partnership in 1982. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Cynthia Gabriel, to address the floor and to explain further about her involvement in Suaram and why now investigation is being initiated by the government and not a long time ago. Ms. Cynthia Gabriel.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I always thought that Tuesday nights and Monday nights, nobody will want to come out. Well, because the week just started, so you feel tired and all that. If it was on a Friday or Saturday, then different story. But this maybe is a testimony to the support for civil society. I believe this really is a testimony of solidarity and a show of strength that we are together. We are one voice, and regardless of how TV3 and Utusan Malaysia continues to attack us as being agents of the West, being cronies of Soros, and all kinds of things that you have seen in the last couple of weeks, I think we are here together. So can we clap and applaud each other's presence?
Yeah.
I'd like to start by really saying that maybe today is a time to celebrate. It's a time to celebrate human rights. It's a time to celebrate democracy. It's a time to celebrate a rare good judgment in court where former ISA detainees actually won a suit. And I think all of you know that the issue of the Internal Security Act is the foundation of Suaram. That Suaram was actually formed as a result of the Operasi Lala crackdown in 1987. Some of us weren't born, well I was, but Fadia wasn't. It was a long time ago, it was many years ago, more than 25 years ago, but the ISA has continued to play a major role in many of our lives. And I'm very proud to say that Suaram, despite the different political environments, has continued to keep the ISA issue alive and to continue to keep the issue of detention without trial a very, very important part of the human rights discourse in our country. And today we celebrate. Today we have 5 rich friends. Kononia, they have about 850,000 or about in terms of compensation that was won for wrongful and unlawful detention. And this is an issue we have been fighting for the longest time. And we applaud a rare judgment like that. So that's why I call this a celebration. I think there are sparks, there are rays of hope in this very, very frustrating and sometimes very long struggle when it comes to human rights and democracy. Now, I don't have very much time because I plan to divide what I want to say into 3 parts. Of the 4 speakers, of course, Irene is a founder member of Suaram. I think I've had maybe a fairly long, maybe the longest run with Suaram and how it has actually had an impact on my life. So I'd just like to share a couple of things about how special or how problematic Suaram has been to our lives, to some of our lives. It's like Hotel California. Once you get in, you can never get out. Okay, so that's the Suaram part. The second part is more on the current attacks and why. And the third is to just share with you a little bit about the developments on the Scorpene case. And then maybe you can make your own judgments about whether the inquiry that is going on in France could be one of the reasons why Suaram has suddenly become so important. A small human rights organization that has been working for the last 20 plus years is suddenly getting the highlights in TV3, in Utusan, in NST, like as if there's nothing more important in this country than to attack us. So let me begin with the early Suaram days. As I said just now, it was an organization that was born in the aftermath of perhaps one of the most oppressive times in Malaysian history. It was a group of family members and friends who came together, and some of you are in this hall today, to campaign for the release of ISA detainees back in 1987. So in 89, this group decided to formalize itself a little bit. It only had one very clear objective, which was to repeal the Internal Security Act, nothing else. But because there was so much energy, there was so much passion, there was so much motivation to to take on the human rights agenda. Slowly, Suaram started to grow into other issues as well. And then we have people, founder members like Irene and many others who also brought in bigger human rights elements. So I think one of the important things that we achieved in those early days was the development of a Malaysian Human Rights Charter. Now it's really a crime that we are not publicizing that enough because some people have never heard it, but it was a very important process that there was a charter developed by Malaysian people for Malaysian people, in the same light as the Universal Declaration for Human Rights at that time. So we should get it going again, we should do that. And I was asking a colleague just now, what is it that I should say about Suaram after all these years of being connected with it in a big way and in small ways and in different ways. And I think we agreed that maybe the most special thing about Suaram is that over the years, it never really sought fame or glamour or media publicity. But what it always did was it always tried to push the boundaries, to irritate the administration, to try and test the frontiers to see how much of the rights perspective would be accepted by the people in power. And by doing that, we kept going to work with the vulnerable groups. They include groups like refugees. I remember some colleagues who are now already moved into politics at that time, people like Elizabeth Wong and Sivarasa and me and a few others. We used to go into the very small corners where we know the Rohingya community used to live at that time, because they were the ones that were most hunted by the police, and try and find ways in which UNHCR can give them more protection. And also, I think the other thing was the whole issue of the urban poor. There were several times that we had to hold banners, we had to stand together with the urban poor, which people normally call squatters, by the way, to ensure that they didn't get cheated too much when the developers came to raid their homes and so on and so forth. These things never usually used to come out in the papers. So we were safe because our families didn't really know what we were doing, because the mainstream media never really reported all these things. But now you have Malaysia Kini and Insider and all, so it's different now, the landscape is different. But at that time, these were the things that kept us very spirited, that kept us very strong, that kept us very intrigued by where the human rights agenda was taking us. It was actually taking us to the most vulnerable of communities. It was taking us to places that the mainstream society would not even consider as important to take sides with. And I think in that sense, it made our worlds bigger, that there were people who lived in different contexts, in different poverty situations, and what kind of role Suaram can actually play in bringing such issues to the discussion table, to the agenda, and so on. So, enough of reminiscing, but I thought it was important to set the context, because from a very, very small volunteer setup, Suaram has become what it is today. A slightly bigger organization where we actually managed to find funding to employ 8 staff. We have a branch office in Penang and a branch office in Johor Bahru, and the main office is of course here. And the funding, the foreign funding that has been spoken about so widely, has actually been able to pay for these 8 staff. Now I just want to give you, with the permission of many of the Suaram people around here, a little bit of details, because we have been attacked left, right and center in the mainstream media, making it look like Suaram is a multi-million-dollar organization getting grants from all over the place. Now this is completely untrue. The budget of Suaram, now I don't know if everyone else is going to share this, but the budget of Suaram, and we are open, we've always been open, but just to say that the budget of Suaram on a yearly basis is about 450,000 ringgit. Now this is nothing much at all. This pays for 8 staff salaries and it runs about 5 or 6 campaigns. And so you get staff who actually risk their personal securities, who actually risk their comforts when they could be working somewhere else, to take a salary of something like about 2,500 ringgit. Now this is a general, normal NGO payment. Nothing so special about how Suaram underpays their staff. Generally, all NGOs underpay their staff terribly. And it's not because they want to do it, but because there's not enough funding, there's not enough money. Now I'm telling you all this openly because I think this is an important opportunity to debunk what propaganda is actually being thrown out in the mainstream media. It's being made to look like as if civil society is getting so much money that it has the capacity to destabilize. Now the word destabilize has been used by the media several times, and it is extremely unfair, and it puts us in a corner, it discriminates us, and it actually leaves us in a defensive position. But I just shared with you 2 important details, that staff that actually come into Suaram can actually work in a corporate setup and get 5 times more salary, but they don't. So there must be something about commitment, there must be something about the spirit and the passion to actually build a better, greater human rights environment in the country. And we need to applaud that. Staff who work in civil society and human rights organizations are hard to come by. So of course NGOs also differ in size, there are different scales of funding, different projects and so on, but it's completely untrue that there would be an agenda that the West is trying to promote here. The only agenda for Suaram is the agenda for human rights and democracy. And when you attack Suaram, it means you're actually attacking the work of human rights and you're attacking the work of democracy. And that's why we're here today, because we believe that the attacks have to stop. The attacks really have to stop. And the only way we can do it is to actually speak in concert, to speak in a way which is collective, and to tell the government, lay off, enough. But easy to say. Tomorrow I have to go to Putrajaya for questioning. They are investigating us for running an illegal society, it seems. So we'll see what comes out of that. Now I've been told that there's very few minutes left, but I just wanted to say that I'm putting the question to you. Why do you think Suaram is under attack now? Is it because of a particular issue that we've been talking about? Do you think so? Yes. What is it? Any guess? Scorpene? You think so? No? Yes? Scorpene? Well, it's anybody's guess, because they're not admitting to the fact that we are under attack now because of something that we're particularly doing. But it doesn't need a scientist or a medical doctor or some big professional to actually conclude that there must be something about what we've been doing recently that has caused the government so much anxiety and so much worry that they probably think attacking Suaram would be a good way to distract and to ensure that the issue of corruption, the issue of whistleblowing, blowing the whistle on political leaders who have done wrong can actually be swept under the carpet. And we also know this is a very, very heated, heightened moment because the general elections is coming. Everything is politicized. Yesterday, my mayor of Petaling Jaya got removed in a 24-hour notice. I wonder whether that's a political decision or not. But I suppose we live in very exciting and very tense times that the political situation has also enhanced the attacks on Suaram and to make it look like we have actually been doing something very wrong. But just to conclude on the issue of Scorpene, There's two things I want to say, and this is not really a Scorpene forum, although there's many, many things to update you, but just the two things. We have very, very clear indications from the lawyers in France that regardless of whatever happens to Suaram, whether they try to deregister us or declare us illegal or charge us in court, it's not going to impact upon the inquiry in France. The inquiry goes on. The inquiry goes on. And the reason is because we have been made a civil party to the criminal investigation. So, irrespective of Suaram's status, the inquiry goes on. So don't you think this exercise is one that's done in futility? They're really backing up the wrong tree. They're going off on a wrong track. So if it's not Suaram that brings it up, it will be WAO, it will be Tenaganita, it will be Malaysia Kini that's still there to expose everything. So what really is the point of these attacks? But having said that also, I think we recognize that the crackdown is probably widening to ensure that civil society space is going to be shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and controlled. And the other thing to say is something that I also said in an IPO forum 2 days ago, that the inquiry is really progressing because we have been allowed to tell you that the first subpoena has already reached the first Malaysian witness. I just cannot tell you who the witness is, when the subpoena reached, etc., because I know Malaysia Kini is going to ask me that later. But for now, we cannot say anything because we have to follow the court proceedings and we can only quote from the court notes. So that also leaves Suaram in a slightly more difficult situation because we have to abide by the timing on the front side. So with that, I just wanted to end by saying that this is certainly not the end of Suaram, but definitely the beginning of a stronger, a more cohesive human rights movement. Suaram and many NGOs will fight tooth and nail until the end. Let them do whatever, we'll still stay strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia Gabriel. We now move on to our second speaker, Ms. Irene Fernandez. Irene Fernandez is also a co-founder of Suaram, and now she's the executive director of Tenaganita. Maybe she can share her experiences in running the organization and also in facing all the obstacles, by the government in order to keep on doing the human rights work. Irene.
Thank you very much, Fadia. A very good evening to each and every one of you for being here. I'm going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. Who is the good? Definitely you and us. You and us because we believe in democracy, we believe in good governance, we believe in people's rights and dignity that must be respected and upheld at all times. And we believe that in order to ensure democracy, good governance and human rights is practiced, is developed, and spaces created for that expression comes through organizing. Organizing into associations, into frameworks, legal frameworks that will create the spaces and the voices for the Rakyat. And therefore, we have had the growth of civil society in Malaysia, particularly the pro-democracy movement, the last 20 years especially. And at each stage, there has been counter-reactions taking place. Now today, we see some bad guys, what I call them gombos, government-organized NGOs. They That's what we are. And they are there to create false perceptions, to get the government machinery moving as a counter force to the goodness of people who want to ensure good governance, accountability, and human rights. And these gongos are given a lot of spaces in the mainstream media. And they come around and say, look, Suaram is illegal. And you have 6 agencies mobilized to go after. We report a crime. We report an exploitation of labor. It takes years. And the budget can multiply for more police force, but that's not going to reduce crime because the police force is being used wrongly. And so that's a deception that's coming from the ugly. And who is the ugly? Who do you think is the ugly? The corrupt government we have. Because if this government is not corrupt, is accountable, then the voices that come from Suaram and other civil society for accountability will not hurt them. As it is, the exposure of the Scorpene deal is turning the current regime into a scorpion. So you're having a scorpion attack Suaram because of the Scorpene. And I think it is very important to recognize that the spotlight on Suaram currently is a diversion as well. So that the Rakyat now begins to have doubts about what is being exposed, about the court process in France, as well as all other issues of accountability that has been raised. Najib believes he can do everything, that even we do not need a women's rights movement. And that is the ridiculous stage in which we have a Prime Minister who is saying, there is no problem in this country at all. And I think the spotlight on Suaram brings me back to the spotlight on Tenaga Nida in 1996, when we exposed the dehumanized